Pull up the notes I sent out this morning. I'm gonna just knock out these notes here real quick.
Can I turn the microphone on?
Yeah. All right, so section 3 here. Let's get this stuff out. Section 3 is dealing with powers of Congress. So some of the stuff talked about in, I believe it's in chapter 3. So maybe a little bit of crossover here. I might move the test back one day. There may be something I'm going to have you guys do for me on Thursday that Ms. Lindauer asked me to do pertaining to this thing on World War II and Women's History Month. So there's something on Congress here. I might have you guys do me a favor. I'll give you guys extra credit points for. I got to get a couple things from her about it. So I may push the test back to that Monday. For the remote day, so I give you time, like all day, to take it or whatever. So I'll let you guys know on Thursday. All right. So what here is basically we're talking about chapter 3, kind of dealing with. We were talking about just a brief thing on the branches of government and just generally the kind of the role the federal government has on certain types of powers that are listed in the Constitution. Right. And so we had talked about like things like delegated. Implied and enumerated powers and stuff like that. Where we're talking about kind of like what is given strictly to the federal government, what's given to the states, what's shared by both to a certain extent. So those powers that are specifically given, and when we in chapter 3, so the government is specifically given essentially to the legislative branch, right? Because Article 1, which deals with legislative branch, is the longest article in the Constitution. Section 8 is a major section here, with most of the powers are listed in what the Congress can do and also what they cannot do, the certain limits that are in there. Section 8 has numerous clauses in here, and this is one that's constantly quoted, one that's constantly brought up when cases are kind of brought up to the Supreme Court, determining whether the federal government has certain powers or whether they've overstepped their boundaries and things of that nature. All right. So these are powers that are basically listed in the Constitution, specifically granted to them. And so I have it numbered on the notes there, kind of listed here. These powers here. So the first delegated power that's kind of listed in the Constitution that's given particularly to the legislative branch, Congress, is financing the government. This is a major kind of authority here. As which listed in Article 1, they have the right to the authority to raise and collect taxes, borrow and print money, coin money if you. Hey, how's it going?
Okay.
Thank you very much. And all this, again, just recently here, I don't know if you're following the news, the kind of COVID stimulus, kind of like the COVID relief plan, the bill that's kind of going through Congress here right now. This is kind of falls under that, and that in many cases, the idea of kind of printing money, basically kind of sending checks. In this case, to kind of Americans who kind of under a particular kind of threshold when it comes to income and all this stuff. These are all, again, this idea is to pay for government programs, defense, things of that nature. So obviously, this is a major part of what you kind of do. Within that, you have different types of kind of taxes that are mentioned specifically in the Constitution. Duties are tariffs. So they use the term duties. A tariff is simply a tax on imported goods. All right, goods coming into a country. Tariffs are somewhat of, and while this here, Congress also has the right to kind of determine, we have these things that are out there like NAFTA, which has been kind of renegotiated, which was kind of negotiated by the executive branch, but particular Congress, the Senate in particular, has to kind of like approve any treaties that's kind of signed with other foreign nations. That's related to tariffs, but they can issue tariffs, and again, tariffs. Last part of the 20th century, there's been a push to kind of limit tariffs. The idea to encourage global trade, right? The idea that, it's like if the kind of the taxes really kind of passed on to the consumer, and excises, internal taxes, things like manufacturer sales tax is a big excise tax. And while this is specifically listed to the federal government, you also have sales taxes for like special communities and something like that. All right. Second one is regulating and encouraging American trade and industry. This is listed within Section 8. Congress has the regulates trade with foreign countries. Like I said, you can have treaties signed, but particularly Congress has to approve them. Among states, passing laws to protect rights of inventors, things of that nature. These are all kind of mentioned within Section 8 here. This was kind of put into the Constitution. Again, this is the United States as a young country. It was trying to kind of encourage like people to protect like things to kind of in certain inventions when it came to kind of agricultural output and such. The thing that kind of falls within this concept is something that is referred to as the Commerce Clause, which tends to be one of these catch-all kind of parts of the Section 8. This gives Congress the power to trade with foreign nations, regulate that, states, among states, and Native American tribes. The Commerce Clause has been kind of used at times to kind of break up monopolies. 2005, it was used to regulate possible kind of marijuana industries, which have become somewhat popular. And the Native American tribes, which again, you find Native American tribes kind of living in reservations and things of that nature. That cause all falls under this. This, like I said, tends to be a catch-all. Interstate trade is just basically trade between states. Congress regulates that. So any trade that, like if you a company that deals with, if you go from Illinois to Missouri, a lot of times you'll have to follow like certain rules and regulations that are placed on by the federal government. Trade within a state is intra-state trade, and that is regulated by the states in particular. We'll talk about that in more detail when we talk about the Illinois State Constitution. Within this as well, we're talking about kind of in the concept of inventors and artists and things of that nature. Congress within this clause has the right to issue patents. There's a patent office within the legislative branch. Patent just basically is a license and gives an inventor the right to own and sell an invention. And at times, you have people who have the same idea. It's also important like when those ideas can reach the patent office. And then copyrights. These are for artists, writers, musicians. This is to kind of protect intellectual property. I have a band, and we have to copyright our stuff, and we had to we had to get a publishing company to kind of like do that. So the idea behind that is to try to protect against piracy, but it's been kind of a Wild West since the internet with that. So that's always been kind of a tough one to regulate at times. All right, but these are all listed within that clause within Section 8. Third one, obviously, is defending the country. Congress has the sole power to declare war and to maintain armed forces, determining kind of passing a budget and for what the Pentagon gets. A lot of times, if you hear the term when they say the Pentagon and when they're talking about budget concerns, that's the Defense Department. There has been cases in history where we've been in armed conflicts where a war was not declared. Prime example would be the Vietnam War. But after that, there were certain things passed like the War Powers Act. But a war to be officially declared, Congress has to declare war. Creating lower courts, we'll talk about that also when we get into chapter 7. Establishing circuit and appellate courts, where those are on the federal level. Like there's a federal circuit court over in St. Louis that has been put under the jurisdiction of Congress to determine where that was. And 5, providing growth. Congress can pass laws to regulate immigration and naturalization, govern territories, provide for the admission of new states. That last one has been mentioned at just recently with this last election about maybe giving DC statehood, or there's always every few years Puerto Rico they have a vote on that. This is again regulated. This is kind of determined by Congress, if you will. And so naturalization, there's terms that again sometimes I'll use that. Probably need a little bit of clarification. Process by which a foreign person becomes a U.S. citizen. So there's two types. You have native-born citizens and naturalized citizens. All right. Basically, to go through the naturalization process, you're basically what you guys are doing right now. They take basically a government class, constitution class. I remember in college I had a class with we were in a U.S. history class, and the guy just kept on answering these questions based on the Constitution. Our professor shamed us. Well, he had just passed his naturalization thing, and he was saying that he just, this was just kind of like real easy. And then you have implied powers. All right, implied powers, again, like when you imply something, it's not specifically stated, but it leaves some open-ended concepts here. So there's a major kind of clause, the last clause within Section 8 here, which is like anything we haven't thought of or has yet to be created. It establishes something called the elastic clause. Elastic, it kind of expands, so this gives Congress the power to any action, really, like kind of necessary and proper. So the elastic clause gives the federal government the right to Congress to kind of regulate and stuff like, air travel, kind of dealing with the internet, FCC, commerce, and all this other stuff. So it's something that the idea was so Congress or the government can particularly kind of adjust to the changing times. So this is basically kind of a catch-all term that you kind of throw in there, in as far as the implied powers go. Also, too, you have the Congress has the power to impeach, all right, which was in the news just recently. So you guys, everybody knows, to impeach is just to accuse an office holder of misconduct. All right. Now, this impeachment doesn't just strictly go for presidents and stuff like that. It's anybody within the executive or judicial branch. There have been judges who have been impeached and such. I think we've all had to, if you follow the news in the past couple of years, you probably had an education on this. Impeachment is just the charges, all right? It has to be brought by the House just by kind of a simple majority vote. And the Senate holds a trial. So the senators kind of serve as kind of a jury. 2/3 of the Senate must find the official guilty. And we'll talk about this again in more detail when we get into the executive branch, which a lot of times that kind of is a big check the legislative branch has on the executive branch. All right, so as we just realized, it's 2/3 is kind of hard to get in this kind of day and age. So there have been 3 presidents who've been impeached, 1 impeached twice. All right, so this I think just everybody's kind of aware of this now because of the recent events. And then there's certain special powers also, like the idea of treaties. A treaty is just simply a written agreement with a foreign nation. The Senate in many cases serves as kind of the body that approves of various things like treaties and appointments and stuff like that. So all kind of treaties signed with foreign nations must be approved by the Senate by a 2/3 vote. Again, so you're looking at 60. And a prime example in history were one treaty where it was the Treaty of Versailles. If you guys study World War I in U.S. history, talk about the Treaty of Versailles, which was basically negotiated by the president at the time, Woodrow Wilson. When he got back to the States, it wasn't ratified by the Senate. So the United States had to sign separate treaties with Germany and Austria-Hungary and that. And cabinet members, Supreme Court justices, all must be approved by the Senate as well. That's just a simple majority, those approvals. There was an issue with Supreme Court appointment last year with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The Senate does that. So the Senate is kind of like a kind of approval, kind of a body of Congress. Limits though, what Congress cannot do, can't pass ex post facto laws. Ex post facto, that meaning after the fact. This applies to law actions that were occurred before the laws were passed. So if something was illegal, all right, and then they determined that it was legal, and you committed that crime before it was legal, but now it's legal, you can't be tried. Bills of attainder, laws that sentence people to prison without a trial. This was kind of put in the Constitution in a sense, essentially as a kind of reaction to some of the things that were happening during the kind of the American Revolution and that. At times, though, some of the bills of attainder have been suspended based on certain things like wars or invasions or something. Some of those were like during the Civil War. There's a number of bills of attainder that were issued for people who were very critical of the war effort. And then habeas corpus, which basically they cannot suspend it, requiring the person to be brought to the court, cleans out the body. All right. So under kind of habeas corpus, the idea is that you have to be brought in front of a judge, be told what you're being tried for. This is all kind of within also your concept of due process of the Fifth Amendment. All right. So, like with kind of bills of attainder, sometimes like the Civil War, some writs of habeas corpus were suspended at times from these guys who were called copperheads, who were kind of like the Democrats that were in the North that were kind of critical of the war effort in the South. And then other limits, you can't tax exports because that's stupid. That would basically just kind of hurt American industry. Passing laws that violate the Bill of Rights, that's just kind of a general thing. Favoring trade of a state, granting nobilities. Can't give somebody duke or noble. Withdrawing money without a law. It has to be it has to be passed. Also, too, kind of there should throw in there would be like the 27th Amendment, which basically Congress can't give themselves a pay raise until after an election, which that's voted on. So to make sure that they're kind of basically on the up and up. So that's it. I wanted to get through this quickly, and I did. I'm very proud of myself. Tomorrow I'm going to finish up the chapter talking about how a bill becomes a law, which is kind of in the news right now. And then, like I said, maybe Thursday, I might, do this thing that I have to talk to Miss Lidar about. So if that's the case, I'll just push the test back to Monday. Ain't no big deal. Yes, dear.
What was this place?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't realize that it was.
Oh, yeah.
There's a-
Oh, that should be by should be by the Senate. Yeah. Did you guys get this at home?
I missed a couple.
Okay, which ones you miss, huh?
I need the slide where it says limits on power, what Congress cannot do.
Okay.
This room, I'm gonna go down to the office.
Sure, yes. Right there.
Yeah.
Okay.